Hi guys, in this video we're going to have a look at Mann Whitney Test, which is another type of non-parametric test. First, let's have a look at the background of this test. Mann Whitney Test is also known as U-test, whereby the test is used to compare differences between two independent samples when the data is either ordinal or continuous but not normally distributed, or when the sample size is small, or when n is less than 25. So these are the conditions that require the use of Mann Whitney test in order to analyze the data. Now let's have a look at what is meant by dependent and independent samples. Dependent samples refer to two samples that are associated, that are paired and match, or referring to before and after situation. So normally the use of words like dependent, repeated, before and after, match pairs and paired are indicated in the equation. So from here we know that the samples are dependent. And the test that is used to analyze data that have dependent samples is Wilkinson sign test. On the other hand, independent samples refer to samples that are not related, not paired, and doesn't have any relationship. Another indication that the samples are independent is that the size of the sample is not equal, unlike dependent samples. So the test that is used to analyze independent sample is Mann Whitney test, which is our focus in this tutorial. Another information about Mann Whitney test is that it is the non-parametric alternative to the unpaired t-test or two-sample independent t-test. Now let's have a look at the procedure that we need to perform in order to analyze non-parametric data using Mann Whitney test. The first step, like in any other statistical test, we have to form null and alternative hypotheses. Followed by the second step, where we have to combine the two samples and we have to rank the combined samples from the lowest to the highest. In the third step, we have to calculate the sum of ranks of sample 1 as 1 and sum of ranks of sample 2 as 2. Followed by the fourth step, where we have to calculate U1 and U2, given by this formula. In the fifth step, we have to determine the test statistics U. There are three conditions that we have to refer in order to determine U, whereby the first condition given here refers to two tell tests, and the other two conditions refer to one tell test. In the sixth step, we have to determine critical value from the Mann Whitney table. And this is followed by the seventh step, whereby we have to make a decision based on the rule of thumb that we reject the null hypothesis if the U is less or equal to CV. And the final step is to make a conclusion, whereby we have to state back the hypothesis that you decide to accept in detail. Now let's have a look at how we can solve an equation using Mann Whitney test. Suppose we are given with this problem. The following are the reaction times for randomly selected subjects who took either drug A or drug B. Use a 5% level of significance to test that there is no difference in the reaction times between the two drugs. Before we go into the solution, let's have a look at what kind of data that we have here and how we're going to decide that Mann Whitney test is the suitable test to be used to analyze this kind of data. So as you can see in the question, there is no such word like related, paired, match, or before and after. So that clearly indicates that these data are not dependent. And another indicator that we can use as well is you can see that the sample size of drug A is not similar to the sample size of drug B. So apparently, these two samples are not dependent and they are independent samples. Let's go into the solution for this problem. In the first step, we have to form the null and alternative hypothesis. This can be written as follows. For the null, there is no difference between drug A and drug B. And for the alternative hypothesis, there is a difference between drug A and drug B. If you notice in the question, it doesn't specify any preference. So we can just assign mu A is not equal to mu B. And that clearly shows that this is a two-tailed test. The second step says that we have to combine the two samples and we have to rank the combined samples from the lowest to the highest. These are the original data given to us, and these are the ranks that we have to assign to all of the data. In the third step, we have to calculate the sum of ranks of sample 1 and sum of ranks of sample 2. So for sample 1, that is drug A, the sum of ranks is given by 4 plus 7 plus 2 plus 8 plus 1 and plus 3, that is equal to 25. Whereas sum of ranks of sample 2 is given by 66. Apart from that, we also have to identify the sample size of drug A and drug B, which are 6 and 7 respectively. In the fourth step, we have to calculate U1 and U2 based on this formula. So the U1 and U2 values that we solve for this equation are 4 and 38 respectively. In the following step, we have to determine the test statistics U based on these three conditions. Since the alternative hypothesis that we have written in the first step falls into the first condition here, so U is given as the minimum of 4 and 38, that is equal to 4. In the sixth step, we have to determine the critical value from the Mann Whitney table. This is the Mann Whitney table. In order to find the CV, first we have to identify what are the values of N1, N2, level of significance alpha, and also whether the test is one-sided or two-sided. So based on this information, for this problem, the CV is given as 6. In the next step, we have to make a decision based on the comparison between the CV and the U. The rejection of the null hypothesis is when U is less or equal to CV. So since U is equal to 4, CV is equal to 6, and U is less than 4, then we have to reject the null hypothesis, or in other words, we have to accept the alternative hypothesis. In the final step, we have to make a conclusion, whereby we have to state back the accepted hypothesis in detail. So the conclusion can be written as, at alpha equal to 0.05, drug A is different from drug B. So these are all the steps that we have to perform in order to solve a non-parametric question using Mann Whitney Test. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. For more video tutorials on statistics, please visit No Statistics No Talk on YouTube.